Okay, let's jump right into this fun story. Imagine a super hot summer day. The sun is blazing high in the sky, making everything feel warm and sticky. In a small, quiet neighborhood, kids are running around, laughing and splashing in their little pools. You can hear the water going splash, splash, splash. Birds are singing happy songs, chirping away in the trees. It's the kind of day where you just want to relax and have fun. And me? My name's Jake. I'm just a regular guy who loves chilling out. That day, I was floating in my backyard pool on a giant inflatable unicorn. Yup, a big, colorful unicorn with a goofy smile. It's bright pink and purple, and it's so big I can stretch out on it like it's my own little boat. Sounds nice and peaceful, doesn't it? Well, guess what? It didn't stay that way for long. See, I've got this neighbor. Her name's Karen. Well, that's what I call her because she acts like one of those bossy people you hear about. She's in charge of something called the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. It's like a club that makes rules for our neighborhood, like how tall your grass can be or what color your house should be. Karen loves being the boss of it. She walks around like she's the queen of the whole street. Everyone knows who she is. If you see her coming, you might duck behind a bush or pretend you didn't hear her calling your name. She's always watching, always complaining about something. Your dog barked too loud, or your mailbox looks messy. That's Karen. Nobody likes arguing with her because she never stops talking. But here's the funny part, nobody knew that my silly unicorn float was about to flip her world upside down. Not even me, at first. Let me paint the picture for you. My backyard is small but cozy. There's a little wooden fence around it, not too tall, just enough to keep my pool private. The water sparkles under the sun, all blue and cool. I'm floating there, my feet dangling off the unicorn's side, feeling like I'm on vacation. The unicorn's head bobs up and down a little as I move. I've got sunglasses on, a cold drink in my hand, lemonade, my favorite, and I'm just smiling. No worries, no problems. The kids down the street are still yelling and playing, their voices bouncing around. A tiny breeze blows through, rustling the leaves in the trees. Everything feels perfect. I'm thinking, this is the best day ever. Nothing can ruin this. But then, I hear it. A loud voice. A very loud voice. It's coming from the other side of my fence. I peek over the edge of my unicorn float, and there she is, Karen. She's standing there with her hands on her hips, looking mad as ever. Her face is all scrunched up, like she just ate a sour lemon. She's wearing these big sunglasses that make her look like a bug, and her hair is piled up high on her head. She's pointing at me. No, wait, she's pointing at my unicorn float. I can hear her shouting already, even before she gets close. What is that thing? She yells. That doesn't belong here. I blink at her, confused. It's just a float. A big, silly unicorn. What's the big deal? Now, Karen's not new to me. She's been my neighbor for a while. Ever since I moved in, she's been poking her nose into everything I do. One time, she told me my trash cans were too close to the curb. Another time, she said my flowers were too bright and hurt her eyes. I mean, come on. Flowers are supposed to be pretty. But this time, it's my unicorn float she's mad about. I don't get it. It's just sitting there in the water, not hurting anyone. It's not loud. It's not ugly. It's fun. I figure she'll yell for a minute and then leave, like she always does. I lean back on my float, sipping my lemonade, waiting for her to go away. But oh no, Karen's got other plans. Big plans. And I'm about to find out what they are. Here's the thing, I'm not the kind of guy who likes trouble. I'm easygoing. I like my pool, my float, my quiet days. I don't bother anyone, and I don't want anyone bothering me. But Karen? She's the opposite. She loves trouble. She loves telling people what to do. And that day, she decided my unicorn float was her next big fight. She starts stomping closer to the fence, her flip-flops slapping the ground loud enough for me to hear over the water. Slap, slap, slap. She's waving her arms like she's trying to scare off a flock of birds. This is against the rules, she shouts. I'm in charge here, and I say that thing has to go. I tilt my head, still floating, and think, rules. What rules? It's a pool float, not a monster. But Karen's not done. Oh no, she's just getting started. She pulls out her phone, holding it up like it's a weapon. Her fingers are moving fast, tapping away. I can't hear everything she's saying, but I catch bits of it. Emergency, she says into the phone. There's a problem at Jake's house. My eyes go wide. Emergency. Over my unicorn float? Is she serious? I almost fall off the float laughing, but I hold on. This is too crazy. She's calling someone, maybe the HOA people, maybe her friends, to complain. I don't know yet. All I know is she's making a big fuss, and I'm just sitting there, watching it happen. So here's where it gets good. That unicorn float? It's not just any float. It's about to become the star of something wild. Karen thinks she's got everything under control, but she doesn't know what's coming. Neither do I, not yet. There's a secret waiting to pop out, and it's going to make her wish she'd stayed inside that day. What nobody in the neighborhood knows, what Karen doesn't even dream of, is that my little pool party is hiding something huge. Something that's going to turn this hot summer day into a story nobody will forget. Before we go any further, I've got a question for you. Have you ever had a nosy neighbor who just couldn't mind their own business? Maybe someone who peeked over your fence or told you your bike was too loud. I bet you've got a story like that. Drop it in the comments below. I'm dying to hear what you've dealt with. Oh, and if you like crazy stories like this one, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this. Alright, let's dive into the next part of this crazy story. You've already met Karen, my super bossy neighbor who thinks she rules the neighborhood. She's the kind of person who'd yell at you if one tiny blade of grass in your yard was too long. Seriously. She'd grab a ruler, measure it, and then tell you to cut it shorter. That's Karen for you, always finding something to complain about. And on this hot summer day, she decided my big, silly unicorn float was her next big problem. Oh boy, was she mad. So, there I was, floating in my pool, minding my own business. The sun was shining, the water was cool, and my giant unicorn float was bobbing up and down under me. It's bright pink and purple with a goofy grin, and I love it. I'm just relaxing, sipping my lemonade, when Karen comes stomping over to my fence. She didn't even knock or say hi, she just marched right up, her flip-flops going slap, slap, slap on the ground. Her phone was already in her hand, like she was ready for a fight. She stopped at the fence and stared at my unicorn float like it was a monster or something. Her eyes got all narrow, and her face turned red. That thing is against HOA rules, she barked at me, pointing at my float like it had just insulted her whole family. I looked at her, still floating on my unicorn, and gave her a little wave. Hi, Karen. I said with a smile. I wasn't trying to make her mad, I just thought she was being silly. I mean, it's a pool float. What's so bad about that? I figured she'd yell for a minute, then huff away like she always does when she's mad about something dumb. Like that time she told me my mailbox was too shiny, or when she said my dog's wagging tail was too loud. Yup, that's Karen, always finding something to fuss over. So I leaned back on my float, thinking she'd get bored and leave. But oh no, not this time. Karen had other ideas, and they were wild. She didn't walk away. Nope. Instead, she held up her phone and started yelling even louder. That thing is a safety hazard, she shouted, waving her arm at my unicorn float. A safety hazard? I almost laughed out loud. It's an inflatable toy. It's not dangerous, it's just fun. But Karen's face was serious, like she really believed my float was going to hurt someone. She pointed at it again, her fingers shaking, and then she did something I couldn't believe. She started dialing her phone right there in front of me. I heard her press the buttons, beep, beep, beep. Then she put the phone to her ear and started talking fast. Hello, 911, she said. Yes, this is an emergency. There's a safety hazard in Jake's pool. My jaw dropped. I sat up on my float so fast I almost tipped over into the water. 911? She was calling the police? Over my unicorn float? I couldn't believe it. I rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Nope, this was real. Karen was standing there, screaming into her phone about how my float was breaking all the rules and how it was dangerous for the neighborhood. I looked at my unicorn. It was just sitting there, floating happily, its big goofy smile staring back at me. Dangerous. Really? I wanted to laugh, but I was too shocked. Who calls 911 over something like this? Karen, that's who. Now, here's where it gets juicy. While Karen's yelling and pacing by my fence, I'm still in the pool, watching her like she's on TV or something. Her voice is loud, and she's throwing her hands around like she's trying to wave down a plane. Yes, officer, she says into the phone. You need to come quick. It's an emergency. I can hear every word, and I'm thinking, this lady is nuts. But then I start to wonder what's she going to do when the police show up? Tell them to arrest my float? Put handcuffs on its little unicorn hooves? The thought makes me giggle, but I keep it quiet. I don't want to make her even madder. But here's the best part, the part Karen doesn't know yet. She's so busy shouting and pointing that she has no idea who's already at my house. Yup, there's someone special chilling with me that day, someone she'd never, ever expect. I'm not alone in my backyard like she thinks. I've got company, good company, and they're just hanging out, watching this whole mess unfold. Karen's too busy being loud to notice, but I can see them out of the corner of my eye. They're quiet, sipping their drinks, probably trying not to laugh at her. And me? I'm just floating there, waiting to see what happens next. Because the secret? It's going to change everything. Karen keeps going, though. She's not stopping. This is unacceptable, she yells into the phone. I'm in charge of the HOA, and I say that float has to go. It's against the rules. I tilt my head and wonder what rules? I've never seen a rule that says no unicorn floats allowed. Maybe Karen made it up just because she doesn't like fun. That sounds like her. She loves telling people what they can't do. But calling 911? That's next level crazy, even for her. I can't stop staring as she paces back and forth, her flip-flops slapping louder and louder. She's so sure she's right, so sure she's going to win this fight. But she doesn't know what's coming. Not yet. I could have said something. I could have yelled back, hey, Karen, it's just a float. Chill out. But I didn't. Why? Because I'm not that guy. I don't like fighting. Plus, this was getting too funny to stop. I wanted to see how far she'd take it. And honestly, I knew something she didn't. That secret I mentioned? It was sitting right there with me, ready to make this day a whole lot wilder. So I just waved at her again, nice and calm, and took another sip of my lemonade. Let her yell. Let her call whoever she wants. She's about to find out she picked the wrong float to mess with. So, here's a little question for you to think about. Can you guess who's already at my house? Someone unexpected, someone who's going to turn this whole thing upside down. Karen has no clue, and that's what makes it so good. She thinks she's the queen of the neighborhood, but she's about to get a big surprise. Stick around, because this story's just heating up. Okay, let's keep this crazy story rolling. So, there I am, floating on my giant unicorn in the pool. The sun's still shining bright, the water's nice and cool, and I'm sipping my yummy lemonade through a curly straw. It's one of those perfect summer moments except for Karen. She's over by my fence, yelling into her phone like she's in a big movie scene. Her voice is loud, bouncing off the houses, and she's saying all kinds of wild things. This is an emergency violation, she shouts. It's a public danger. I blink at her, confused. A danger? My unicorn float? It's just a big, goofy toy with a silly smile. But Karen's acting like it's a monster about to eat the whole neighborhood. I can't help it, I giggle a little, but I keep it quiet. She's too busy freaking out to notice me anyway. I'm just floating there, watching her make a total fool of herself. She's waving her arms like a crazy bird, her flip-flops going slap, slap, slap on the ground. Her face is all red, and her big sunglasses are sliding down her nose because she's so worked up. Yes, 911, she says into the phone. You need to hurry. This is serious. I take another sip of my lemonade and tilt my head. Serious? Over a float? I mean, come on. I could see if it was something big like a real monster or a runaway car, but this. It's nuts. But that's Karen for you. She loves making little things into huge problems. And right now, She's putting on a show for the whole street to hear. Here's the fun part, though. While Karen's yelling and stomping around, I'm not alone. Nope. See, I'd invited a couple of my buddies over that afternoon. They're good guys, nice, quiet types who don't make a fuss. They showed up earlier with some snacks and drinks, and we were just hanging out in my backyard. They're sitting on my little patio, under the shady umbrella, sipping sodas and munching on chips. They're chill, not bothering anyone. I told them, come over, let's relax by the pool, and they said, sure, Jake, sounds fun. So there they are, watching Karen lose her mind, just like me. But here's the thing, Karen doesn't know they're there. Not even a little bit. She didn't ask, didn't peek over the fence, didn't care. She's too busy shouting to notice anything else. She keeps pacing back and forth by my fence, her phone glued to her ear. This float is breaking all the rules, she yells. I'm in charge of the HOA, and I say it's got to go. I roll my eyes. Rules? What rules? I've got a little book of HOA stuff in my house, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't say, no unicorn floats allowed. Maybe Karen's making it up just to be mean. That sounds like her. She loves bossing people around. But every word she says, every time she shouts, she's digging herself into a bigger mess. She doesn't even know it. It's like she's digging a hole with a shovel, deeper and deeper, and I'm just watching her do it. I could have stopped her. I could have said, hey, Karen, calm down, it's just a float. But not, why ruin the fun? This is getting too good. My buddies are watching too. They're super quiet, not saying a word. One of them, let's call him Mike, looks over at me and raises an eyebrow. He's got this little smirk, like he's trying not to laugh. I grin back at him from my float and shrug. We both know Karen's being ridiculous, but we're not going to yell at her. Not yet. The other buddy, let's call him Tom, takes a sip of his soda and shakes his head. She's wild, he whispers to Mike, so soft Karen can't hear. They're just chilling, letting her rant and rave. And me? I'm floating, sipping, waiting. Because something big is coming. Something Karen's going to walk right into, like a bug flying into a window. Bam. She's got no clue. Karen keeps going, though. She's not slowing down. This is a public danger, she says again, louder this time. Someone could get hurt. I look at my unicorn float. It's just sitting there, all happy and bouncy in the water. Hurt someone? How? It's not sharp. It's not heavy. It's made of air and plastic. I almost call out to her, Karen, it's a toy, but I stop myself. Nope, let her keep talking. She's pacing faster now, her flip-flops slapping so loud it's like music. Slap, slap, slap. She's telling the person on the phone all about how bad my float is, how it's ruining the neighborhood. I can hear bits of it. Yes, officer, it's an emergency. Come quick. And I'm thinking, officers. She's really calling the cops? This is getting better and better. My buddies are still watching from the patio. Mike leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. He's got this look like he knows something funny's about to happen. Tom crunches a chip and nods at me, like, you good, Jake? I nod back. Oh, I'm good. I'm great. Because Karen's making a huge mistake, and she doesn't even see it. Every time she yells, every time she says emergency, she's setting herself up for something big. I could tell her to stop. I could wave my arms and say, hey, you're wrong. But why would I? This is like watching a cartoon. Karen's the bad guy, and she's about to trip over her own feet. I'm not going to ruin that. The sun's still hot, the water's still cool, and I'm still floating. My lemonade's almost gone, but I don't care. This show is too fun to miss. Karen's voice gets even louder. I want this fixed now, she shouts into the phone. Send someone right away. I can't hear what the person on the other end says, but I bet they're confused. I mean, who wouldn't be? A 911 call about a pool float? That's not normal. But Karen's sure she's right. She's sure she's the queen of the neighborhood, and she's going to win this fight. She keeps pacing, keeps yelling, keeps digging that hole. And all the while, my buddies and I are just waiting. Waiting for the big moment that's coming. So here's the thing, Karen thinks she's got everything under control. She thinks she's the boss, and I'm just some guy with a silly float. But she's missing something. Something huge. My buddies aren't just random guys. They're special, and she doesn't know it yet. She's too busy being loud to figure it out. Every word she says is like a step closer to a big surprise, and I can't wait to see her face when it hits. I could have warned her. I could have said, Karen, you might want to stop. But nope. This is too much fun. She's about to find out she's not as smart as she thinks, and I'm just floating here, ready for the fireworks. Alright, here we go. The best part of the story is coming up. Things are about to get wild, so hold on tight. Picture this, I'm still floating on my big, goofy unicorn in the pool. The sun's shining down, the water's splashing a little, and Karen's standing by my fence, yelling into her phone like she's the boss of the world. She's been going on and on about how my unicorn float is some big, dangerous problem. She even called 911, saying it's an emergency and a safety hazard. I'm just sipping the last of my lemonade, watching her act all crazy, when suddenly wee-oh-oh-oh, a police siren starts wailing. Yup, a police car is coming. I sit up on my float, my eyes wide. This is getting real. The police cruiser rolls up slow, its red and blue lights flashing bright. It stops right in front of my house, and Karen's face lights up like she just won a prize. She smirks a big, sneaky smile and starts waving her arms like she's directing traffic. Over here. Over here, she shouts, pointing at my unicorn float like it's a ticking bomb ready to explode. The car doors open, and two police officers step out. They're wearing their dark uniforms and shiny badges, looking all serious. Karen's practically bouncing now, so sure she's about to get me in trouble. She runs over to them, her flip-flops going slap, slap, slap on the ground, and starts talking fast. Arrest him, she yells, jabbing her finger at me. That float is illegal. It's against the rules. Do something. I'm still floating in the pool, watching all this happen. My heart's beating a little faster because, wow, police are here. But I'm not too worried. I know something Karen doesn't, and it's about to make this moment so good. The officers walk closer to my fence, their boots crunching on the gravel. Karen's standing there, hands on her hips, looking proud. She thinks she's won. She thinks the cops are going to drag me out of the pool and take my unicorn float away. It's a public danger, she says again, nodding like she's super smart. The officers look at her, then turn their heads to peek over the fence at me. I'm just chilling on my float, giving them a little wave. Hi. I say, nice and friendly. And then it happens. The officers take one good look at me, and they start laughing. Yup, laughing. Not a little giggle, but a big, loud laugh that echoes around the yard. Ha ha, one of them says, slapping his knee. The other one's chuckling so hard he has to hold his hat. Karen's smirk disappears fast. Her mouth drops open, like a fish flopping on the ground. She blinks at them, confused. What's so funny, she snaps, her voice all squeaky. This isn't a joke. Arrest him. But the cops don't stop laughing. They're looking at me, then at each other, and I can see tears in their eyes from laughing so much. Karen's face starts turning redder than a ripe tomato. She doesn't get it. Why aren't they listening to her? Here's the big surprise, the moment that changes everything. One of the cops steps forward, still grinning, and pulls off his shiny sunglasses. Ma'am, he says to Karen, wiping a laugh tear from his eye, that's my float too. You got a problem with it? Karen freezes. Her eyes go huge, like saucers. She stares at him, then at me, then back at him. And me? I'm grinning ear to ear now, because that cop isn't just any cop. It's my buddy, Mike. Yup, the same Mike who's been hanging out in my backyard all afternoon, sipping a soda and watching Karen freak out. He's a police officer, but today's his day off. He wasn't in his uniform earlier, just shorts and a t-shirt, chilling with me and Tom on the patio. But when Karen called 911, his police friends must have called him to come check it out. So he threw on his uniform and showed up with a big surprise for Karen. Karen's jaw is still hanging open. She looks like she might fall over. What? She stammers, her voice all shaky. You're You're with him. Mike nods, cool as can be. Yup, he says. That's my unicorn float. Jake and I got it together last summer. It's awesome, right? He winks at me, and I laugh from my float. Totally awesome, I say, splashing the water a little. The other cop, Mike's friend from work, nods too. Looks pretty fun to me, he says, smiling. Karen's face is so red now it's almost purple. She didn't know the cops were already here in my backyard, and she sure didn't know they were on my side. Let me back up a tiny bit so you get the whole picture. Earlier that day, Mike and Tom came over to hang out. Mike's a cop, but he wasn't working. He was just my buddy, relaxing with me. We were laughing, eating chips, and talking about silly stuff. My unicorn float was in the pool, and Mike even said, "Man, I love that thing." We were having a great time until Karen started her yelling. Mike and Tom stayed quiet while she ranted, just watching from the patio. They didn't jump in or say anything. They let her dig her own hole. And now, here's Mike, standing in front of her in his police uniform, telling her that her emergency is his float too. It's perfect. Karen tries to talk again. But it's against the rules, she squeaks, waving her phone. Mike crosses his arms and shakes his head. I don't think so, he says. I've read the HOA rules. No rule against floats. The other cop nods. Yup, sounds like a waste of our time, he says. Karen's mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. She's stuck. She thought she'd get me in trouble, but instead, she's the one looking silly. The neighbors are peeking out their windows now, watching everything. Some kids down the street stop splashing in their pool to stare. Everyone's seeing Karen's big plan fall apart, and it's all because Mike was already here, on my team. I float a little closer to the edge of the pool, still grinning. Hey, Karen, I call out, want to try the float? It's really fun. Mike laughs again, and the other cop chuckles too. Karen doesn't say anything. Her face is so red it looks like it might pop. She didn't expect this, not one bit. She thought the police would be on her side, dragging me away. But nope. The cops are my buddies, and they think my float is cool. She didn't know they were already chilling with me all along. And now, she's the one who's in for a big surprise. Okay, let's wrap up this wild story with a big, happy ending. So, there's Karen, standing by my fence, her face redder than a big, juicy apple. She just found out the cop she called to arrest me is my buddy Mike, and he loves my unicorn float. She's super confused and embarrassed. Well, I didn't mean, she starts to say, tripping over her words like she's slipping on ice. She's trying to wiggle out of this mess, but Mike isn't letting her off easy. He crosses his arms, shakes his head, and looks right at her. You called 911 over a pool float, he says, his voice calm but firm. That's not okay. That's a misuse of emergency services. Karen's eyes go wide. She opens her mouth to argue, but nothing smart comes out, just more stammers. But she sputters, waving her hands like she's swatting flies. The other cop, Mike's friend, steps up too. He's got a little notepad in his hand, and he's writing something down. Yup, he says, nodding. That's a big no-no. You can't call 911 for silly stuff like this. Karen's face goes from red to white in a flash. She didn't expect this. She thought she'd win, that the cops would yell at me and take my float away. But nope, her little tantrum just got her in trouble instead. Mike looks at her and says, "You're getting a warning this time. And a fine." The other cop finishes writing and hands Karen a piece of paper. "Pay this later," he tells her. "And don't call 911 unless it's a real emergency." Karen takes the paper with shaky hands. She stares at it, then at Mike, then at me floating in the pool. She doesn't know what to say. Her big plan blew up in her face. She wanted to be the boss, but now she's the one getting told off. It's like she tried to kick a ball and kicked her own foot instead. Oops. Me. I'm still on my unicorn float, grinning like it's my birthday. I splash the water a little with my feet, watching Karen try to figure this out. She looks so mad, but she can't do anything about it. "See ya, Karen," I call out, waving nice and big. Mike smirks, and the other cop chuckles. Karen doesn't wave back. She just turns around, her flip-flops dragging on the ground, scuff, 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 and slinks back to her house like a puppy with its tail down. She's defeated, and everyone can see it. The cops tip their hats to me, say, "Have a good day, Jake," and head back to their car. I float on, feeling like a champ. Later, some neighbors who'd been peeking out their windows come over. They'd watched the whole thing, the yelling, the cops, Karen's big flop. "Way to go, Jake," one says, clapping his hands. "That was awesome," says another. They laugh and cheer for me, like I'm the hero of the day. And guess what? Karen's not messing with my unicorn float anymore. Nope, she's learned her lesson. She thought she could boss me around, but she was wrong. Now, I can float in peace, and my unicorn's safe. Victory. Alright, let's finish this story with something fun and happy to think about. So here's the big lesson from all this craziness: sometimes, the loudest people like Karen think they're the bosses of everything. They yell, they point, they act like they're in charge of the whole world. Karen thought she could boss me around just because she's loud and runs the HOA. She thought my unicorn float was her big chance to show everyone who's boss. But guess what? It didn't work out that way. Nope. The quiet ones like me and my float, we ended up on top. I didn't yell back. I didn't fight. I just floated there, smiling, and let her make a big mess all by herself. And in the end, I won without even trying hard. Karen learned that lesson the hard way. She was so sure she'd get me in trouble with the cops. She thought she'd be the hero, and I'd be the bad guy. But when Mike, my buddy the cop, told her that float was his too, her whole plan fell apart. She dug her own hole with all that yelling, and then she fell right into it, plop. It was funny to watch, but it also showed something cool: you don't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes, staying calm and quiet is the best way to come out on top. Karen's loud voice didn't win. My quiet float did. And that feels pretty awesome. So here's something for you to think about: next time someone tries to boss you around over something silly like your favorite toy or how you play, don't get mad. Don't yell back. Just smile and let them talk. Let them dig their own hole, like Karen did. Because the best payback isn't fighting or shouting. The best payback is when they don't see it coming. It's when you stay cool, and suddenly, boom, they realize they're wrong, and you're still standing tall. That's what happened to me. Karen didn't expect the cops to be my friends. She didn't expect me to win. But I did, and it felt so good. What about you? Have you ever had a moment like that? Maybe someone told you what to do, and you turned it around on them? Like when a kid at school said you couldn't play a game, but you found a way to have fun anyway. Or when someone said your idea was dumb, but it ended up being the best one. I bet you've got a story where you were quiet but still came out on top. Tell me about it below, I really want to hear. It's so cool to think about how we can all be strong, even without being loud. Let's keep the good vibes going, okay? Life's too fun to let bossy people ruin it. Float on, smile big, and don't let anyone stop you from being you. That's what my unicorn float taught me, and I hope it sticks with you too. What do you think? Ready to keep the fun rolling? Let me know.